first half of B minor Etude for ILMEA. Um, and the key thing about this one is starts with the alternate positions. Being in the key of B minor, having to negotiate situations where we often have A sharps and C sharps and B sharps in certain cases. These are issues that um, present a challenge to trombone players, but it's something that it gives us also an opportunity where we can focus on utilizing alternate positions. So the first thing that I like to do in this first measure is I like to do both the B and the D, B natural and the D, both in fourth position, followed by the F sharp and the A sharp, both in fifth position. That kind of sets us up for the next measure where we're going B to F sharp again, and also helps us build up our intonation as it pertains to using fourth and fifth positions. In the third measure, I like to do that stay in fourth position for the B and the D, and then it's up to you if you're comfortable. You can play the C sharps in the fourth measure, also in fifth, but that's personal preference. Some students have preferred to just do them in second because that's where they're the most in tune and easiest to play. But as you get better at it, I encourage you to practice that slowly, and alternate it. In situations like this, so you're going. Or just as a way to practice it, because it does make it much more convenient if you do it that way. In the last measure of the first line, same thing as the first measure, play both the B and the D in fourth and the F sharp and the A sharp in fifth. Moving forward on the last measure of the second line, I like to play that A sharp in first. Just because for me, when I learned to play the G flat scale, I would always play the B flat in first, and this is similar, so that motion is natural to me. But if it makes sense to you to play it in fifth, you can experiment and try it there as well. But I personally prefer to play that one in first. That C sharp as well, because of the motion going from fourth to fifth, again, because reminiscent of the G flat scale, I recommend playing that C sharp in second. However, in the first measure of the third line, that's an opportunity to stay in fifth position for that A sharp. So play both the F sharp and the A sharp in fifth position. So like, in the next measure, B sharp obviously is going to be in third, and then that one I just play the C sharp in second, and the E in second, and then it's the same concept for the last measure of that third line. Play the A sharp in first, and the C sharp in second. In the first measure of the fourth line, we will play the stay in fifth for the A sharp, like we did in the measure above. And then in the second measure, when we're going from B natural to B natural with that A sharp in the middle, play the A sharp in fifth. For the C sharp and the A sharp, you can play those last two beats, the second measure, also in fifth. That's what I prefer to do. But again, if it's personal preference, if it's more comfortable for you to play them in second and first respectively, then do whatever's the most comfortable. But it is a good opportunity to work on those alternate positions. So for instance, that cool. Now, the second thing about this one for me is the phrasing. When it comes to playing in 3/4, the general acceptable way of phrasing is to account for about every four measures is the goal. There's no dynamic marked at the beginning, but I try to think of this one starting around a mezzo forte and then just kind of rising and falling with the lines. But I start as trying to take a breath every four measures. Sometimes depending on so that would be a breath after the C sharp in measure 4, a breath after the B natural in the third measure of the second line, and then a quick catch breath between the low B natural in the third measure before you go to the last measure of the third line. And then sometimes, depending on how I feel, I may go all the way to the end of the phrase, but a lot of times, as you may have noticed from my first recording, I do grab a quick catch breath in that little 16th note rest in the last measure of this section. So yeah, so that's the phrasing. The other part of this is articulation. We have very specific articulations written in, going back and forth between legato and staccato. It's a great opportunity for us to have great contrast between those sections. So for instance, in the first two measures, we have an opportunity. And a reminder, my thing about articulations and dynamics is I think of it, the analogy I like to use is stage makeup. When you look at someone wearing stage makeup up close, it looks ridiculous. But further away, you can see every single expression on their face, even when you're not in the front row, even in the back of the theater, you'll notice. It's the same thing with articulations and dynamics. You have to make larger contrasts in what you're playing to impact the listener from far away, and shows that you're being sensitive to what is on the page. Also, the other thing on this is, in addition to the legato and the staccato, we also have some accents that come in as well. Like, for instance, the one that happens at the end of the fourth measure. So I like to give that a little bit extra to make sure that you can hear that I'm using those accents as well. For instance. So make sure to observe where those accents are. Secondly, I really enjoy this one, especially because there's some opportunities to do some cool things with dynamics. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is in that second half of the first four lines, which is starting on the last measure of the second line. I like to do a slight crescendo to beat 2, and then a slight decrescendo up, and then gradually kind of terrace that dynamic concept up. So for instance, like, instead of just going, I prefer to do it like this. It's an opportunity to just show a little bit more musicality and a little bit more contrast to what you're trying to play. Yeah. So last but not least, let's try to run that whole section again. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2.